Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through his top 10 games of 2014. Yeah, here we go. Very exciting. 2014 was a very, very good year. Although before I get into it, a couple of things just got to get out of the way, some bookkeeping. First of all, Merry Christmas if you happen to be watching this on December 25th, the day I make this video live, although it's actually the 24th right now. But if you're celebrating, I hope you have a lovely day. And,
Happy Christmas!
And Jen says Happy Christmas because she likes to pretend she's British, even though... Yes. All right. Happy holidays, everybody. So, I gotta say, since this is still the 2014, there are a handful of games that I have not played that I think have a chance to make this list. Some of them I haven't been able to get because they're easily available outside of Malta, but getting them here is quite tricky. So, there's probably going to be a follow-up video to this in April of 2015 in case anything about this list changes. And so, you'll have to take this as a provisional 2015, but, it's Christmas, everybody. I wanted to give you all a nice little present to, start the day off right. Hopefully, maybe you're opening some packages and you might have gotten one or more of these games. But... let's see, what am I thinking? Aquasphere, Golden Ages, Roll for the Galaxy, and Temporum. All four of those I am so stoked about. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those might knock one or more of these games off the list. And, and there might be some surprises still, too. There's still a bunch of games from 2014 I've yet to play, although I'm pretty confident this is a pretty solid list. And I think one or more of those four might be the only spoilers coming. So, with that out of the way, let's get going. By cheating. Let's start out by cheating and talk about my number 11. The poor almost made it. Missed it by that much. Assault at Doomrock. I just got to give this game another shout out. This is a wonderful, flavorful, funny, entertaining, just delightful and clever, innovative, cooperative adventure game that only reason it didn't make the list. And quite frankly, this would have probably been in my top 5 if it wasn't so gosh darn long. This game takes us easily over 3 hours to play, so it's very, very difficult to get it to the table. And that kind of length the gameplay is so good, but it just doesn't quite make it. But I just wanted to give it a shout out because I met the designer. He's a really cool guy. Self-published this thing, and it is the bee's knees. Great game, Assault at Doomrock. Just had to throw it out there. But now let's actually start with the real top 10, starting with number 10. Viceroy, or Hamicek, I think is how you pronounce it, or something approximating that in Russian. Now, I've done a run-through for this. In fact, I've done a run-through for all but one, I think. Is that right? Yes, all but one of the games I'm about to go through, I've done a run-through for. There will be links to it, at the end of the video, and all that, if you want to go and watch my full run-through of Viceroy. But this is a very cool, very clever game from a Russian publisher that did get published in English at Essen this year. I think it'll probably be more widely available in 2015, but for us, it's still a 2014 game, and it's excellent. This is a wonderful Euro, all about being the viceroy of this fantasy kingdom, trying to consolidate your power within the government by backing certain people, putting them in what's called your pyramid of power, basically taking these square cards and building a pyramid out of them. And I could wax rhapsodic about this game for quite a while, but I'm going to try and make this a fairly quick video because you guys have better things to do today than just watch me talk. You can watch my run-through of it to learn more, but oh man, it is so much fun. It is so clever. Every round, starts with a very, very tense and very unique auction. The thing I love about these auctions is they actually encourage you as players to discuss what you're going to bid on before you bid. Normally we hate blind bid auctions, which is what this game features, but this is a game where they work really well because the rules actively encourage you to almost barter and negotiate before you make the bid, which is great. It's a great way to make a blind bid really wonderful. But then once you've won your auction and gotten the character who you're going to add to your hand, the way you use them, whether you hold on to them to play at the higher echelons of your pyramid of power, whether you create a broader base and go wide. There's so many ways to score points. And the art is stunning. This has got to be in the running for best artwork of the year. So gorgeous, so lovely to look at, and so bright and colorful. We absolutely love our number 10, Viceroy. And now on to number 9. Now this is a lovely little deck building game. all about writing a paperback. In this game, this fuses the deck building mechanisms of a Dominion with the word building game of Scrabble. There's no better way to do this. This is Dominion meets Scrabble, and that turns out to be awesome. It is a genuine, you got peanut butter in my chocolate type situation, because the two halves combine to make something absolutely amazing. I've done a run through for this, so you can watch the video of it. But in a nutshell, you are like Dominion. You have your starting deck of cards. You're using those based on what cards you have in your hand every round to buy new cards to add to your deck, and evolve and modify your deck so your deck can become good at making words, because that's what we're trying to do. You're trying to make words to score points. And it's a lot of fun. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because, again, I've done the video for it. But I think the thing that put this in the top 10, there's two things. This game could be incredibly AP prone, because you can get to situations where the complexity of your hand of cards could just, really knock you for a loop with all the different words you can make. But there's this system called bounties where basically, if you can't come up with a good word, you can basically show your hand to the table and basically see if anybody else can come up with a better word with your hand than you do. And if you do, you'll score that potentially much higher scoring word that somebody helped you with. And they, in turn, will get will get these little bounty chips that they can trade in to use later in the game. I think that's a brilliant system. It's a wonderful way to fight against analysis paralysis. And it basically turns the game into, the occasional cooperative game, because, hey, I don't know what to do. The best I can come up with is fur. There's got to be a better word here. Can somebody help me with this? And so suddenly everybody's working together. Everybody has a vested interest in helping you make the best word you can. I think that's brilliant. But what's even better is this game comes with a lovely variant that allows you to play it cooperatively. And that is how Jen and I love playing this game, because it's very challenging. It is a hard, tough co-op to beat. We've yet to beat it. But we spend the entire game working together to build words, and it's a hoot. We hate Scrabble. We don't really like word games at all, but we love Paperback, our number 9. Now, moving on to number 8. Oh my gosh, this box is really full of cardboard. Alchemists. There is a lot of stuff in this game, and as with all these other ones, you can watch my run through to learn more. But in a nutshell, this is a game where players are rival alchemists trying to discover the secrets of the universe by basically using the scientific method, taking various alchemical components like toadstools and bird feathers, eagle feathers and stuff like that, and combining them to create different potions. And the neat thing about it is, you have no idea if you combine wart of frog with eagle talon, what kind of potion that's going to create. And the way you find out is you take the two cards that represent these things, you basically point your smartphone at it, because you download an app, a supplementary app for Alchemists, and the app on your smartphone tells you what you've created. And the beautiful thing is, nobody else at the table, everybody else knows what you created. Everybody discovers, wow, he's learned how to make health potions, but nobody knows how you made it. And the implementation of a digital app into this very, very heavy, complex game is flawless. It is gorgeous, and it elevates this experience. And it creates a deductive game that does things that no other deduction game out there can do. The fact that I can deduce something and still keep that information secret, without having to reveal it, it's brilliant. I absolutely love it. It's a very challenging game. It really stresses me and Jen out quite a bit, because I have to admit, we've only played it a few times and we're still learning the secrets of how to best deduce stuff. I have heard people say that once you've played enough times and you've mastered the deduction of the game, that it becomes kind of boring. And heck, maybe that's true. Maybe this will be one of the games that in April, after we played it a few more times, maybe it'll fall a few steps. But as it is right now, we are loving our number 10, 9, 8 Alchemists. And moving on to number 7, the Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Now, I think for a lot of people, this is probably going to be higher on their list, because this is a big breakout hit, hugely popular game. A lot of people really enjoy it, and so do we, because this game has so much flavor and life because of its theme. Because you're not just building castles in this game, you're building castles for Mad King Ludwig. And what does that mean? You're making crazy, insane, totally unreasonable, goofy, ridiculous castles where you're building, dining rooms right next to your dungeons, right next to there's. When this game is over and you sit back and you look at the table and you compare what your castle is compared to what your neighbor's castle is, you end up having to, if you try to dramatically or thematically justify what you've ended up creating at the end of this game, it's ridiculous, but it's so much fun. The gameplay itself is really fantastic as well. We really, really enjoy it, and you can watch the run-through to learn more. But at the end of the game, this is one of those things one of these games where we just find ourselves so satisfied because we've built something. We've created something that's unique and special to us. And then it's just, gravy on top that what we've created is, the work of a madman. And very entertaining in that regard is Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Now, moving on from number 7 to number 6. This is a tricky one to talk about because I don't actually have a copy of the game. The game itself is Aquasphere from designer Stefan Feld, which some of you may know is my personal favorite designer of all time. I mean, everything he does we end up liking at various levels, and most of the time we end up loving it, and Aquasphere is no different. It's a game, it's a very, very heavy Euro, all about competing scientific research teams in an aquasphere, which is basically a scientific research lab at the bottom of the ocean. It's kind of like the International Space Station, except in orbit. It's under the sea. And in this game, each player has 2 characters he controls, a scientist and an engineer or programmer. And you have to very carefully plan the movements of your scientist and your programmer, because the programmer's job is to basically program all the automated robots that are on this research station so that they can help the scientist do his research. So you have to do a lot of advanced planning to make sure that the programmer is always 2 steps ahead of what the scientist needs to do. But at the same time, the station itself is effectively under attack from undersea nasties, these octopods they're called. And so you're constantly being diverted from your actual research to scrape the octopods off the sides of the station, and that's a great way to score points. In addition to doing research, you're constantly developing new bits of technology that give you special abilities that can really kind of help focus. And overall, the game is absolutely fantastic. It's a hugely challenging, very, very heavy game, and we really enjoy it a lot. Although unfortunately I cannot show you the box for Aquasphere. I will be getting it soon. I was such an idiot. I should have picked it up at Essen, but I was waiting for the Tasty Minstrel version because I wanted to get it in English, and then, because I didn't realize that the Pegasus Spiele version was German/English. I would have picked it up at Essen. I'd have it here right now. I cannot wait to get a copy. It's driving me nuts not having it because it is my number 6 of the year, Aquasphere. Moving on to number 5. Now, this is the only game that as of today I have not done a run through for. For every other game I'm talking about, including the honorable mentions, you can actually go and watch videos of it. But unfortunately, that is not at this point the case for Orléans. Or Orleans, but I believe it's in French. It must be pronounced something like Orléans. I haven't looked that up, but that's got to be right? This is a very, very neat game, and since I can't point you to the run-through, I will actually talk a little bit more about what's going on in this game. This is a pretty straightforward, on some level, goods conversion into points Euro-style game set in a Renaissance French town of Orléans, where we are dividing our time as successful entrepreneurs. We're dividing our time between traveling through the landscape, collecting goods that are worth points at the end of the game, traveling on road or on river, depending on whether we're using wagons or boats. And we are also, how to describe it? Well, basically we're doing a lot of stuff, but the most important thing we're doing in this game over the course of it is using our current workers, which are represented by these little chits, to hire additional workers, or followers I think they're called. And what happens is every time we hire workers, we put them into, everybody has their own cloth bag. And over the course of the game, this bag starts filling up with chits that represent all your different workers. Your merchants, your craftsmen, your farmers, your monks, your scholars, your boatsmen, all these different guys start going into this bag. And at the beginning of every round, what happens is, over time, I'm hiring more and more people. I keep throwing into the bag. At the beginning of every round, I get to draw a certain number of people from the bag, and that represents the workforce I have to use this round. So on this round, I might have drawn for myself a farmer, a scholar, 2 monks, and a craftsman. And so this determines what workforce I have on this particular round. And then I use those guys on my own personal board, and I can send them, because you can see there's all these different jobs that they can do. I can use a farmer plus a craftsman plus a captain to be able, in the village, to hire a merchant, another craftsman, or another boatsman. Or I could use a boatsman plus a craftsman to hire another farmer. And now every time I hire another one of these, they go into the bag along with the people that I use, because they're all tired, they're exhausted. I haven't really gotten the new people yet. But every time I hire one of these people and they join my troop, I also get certain special abilities. Like, the more boatsmen I hire, the more money I make. The more farmers I hire, they actually generate goods for me. So I can get goods by traveling around the world and scoring points that way, or I can get goods by just increasing my workforce amongst farmers. The more knights I get, that means I get to draw more guys from my bag every turn. The more scholars I get, the further I move along this enlightenment track. And probably what's most important, they're all of equal importance, but the more merchants I get, the more special functionality buildings I get to build. And once I've built one of these buildings, that becomes a new place that I can put my workers that gives me a special game-breaking power. And so over the course of the game, you are dividing your attentions between hiring new workers to throw into your bag so that you'll be able to use them in subsequent turns, building new buildings so you get new special powers, and traveling all over the world, collecting goods and setting up trade posts all throughout the countryside. And the game just gives you a ton of stuff to focus on. But what ties it all together is, at the beginning of every round, you've got your bag of people, and you can never be certain what are you going to draw out of there, and that's going to determine what kind of abilities you get this round. It's incredibly satisfying, and Orleans is actually one of several games that came out this year that are collectively referred to as bag builders, because they take the basic function of a deck builder, like Dominion or Thunderstone, or there's a million deck builders out there, but flips it on its head, because you're not building a deck of cards, you're building a bag of chips. And every round, when you pull chips out, that's going to determine what you can do. And in that regard, it has a really, really great feel that is very, very similar to a deck builder, but does a lot of really interesting stuff. I mean, the game includes the opportunity to thin your bag. If you've got guys in here that you don't need anymore, because, say, I don't need merchants anymore because all the resources that they could generate for me are useless to me now because I've already got enough of those. So what you can do is you can start thinning your bag. When you draw these merchants, you can send them off, I forgot to mention, to the big central board, where you can contribute to the success of your town. So if you don't need your merchants out of your bag anymore, thin your bag so that you can have a better chance of drawing your knights or whatever you want, and send the merchants off to help build the cathedral, which will score you points, and potentially lots of points if the cathedral actually gets built and you're the one who actually builds it. So while you're doing everything else, there's also this competition to contribute the most to society by actually thinning out your deck. There's a lot that goes on in this game. It's kind of really hard to sum up very, very quickly. I will be doing a run-through for it very, very soon, because Jen and I really, really, really enjoyed this game. Actually, the most recent time we played it, just a couple days ago, after we were done, Jen said, you know what, if I were doing a top 10 of the year, this would totally make it. You did say that, didn't you? I did. She did. And Jen doesn't think that way. But wow, this is our number 5. Absolutely fantastic. Love it a lot. Look for a run-through coming for it soon. Now, moving on, back to games I have done run-throughs for, so I'll go into a little bit less detail about number 4, Subdivision. Now, this is the other game. Two games came out this year from Bezier Games. The Castles of Mad King Ludwig, I already mentioned that, and Subdivision. And for a lot of people, Castles of Mad King Ludwig is, the cat's pajamas. But we actually find well, actually, I'm not going to say, I think Jen might also agree with most folks that Castles of Ankh-Lu is better, and Subdivision is good, but not great. But I got to say, this game is fantastic. I love this game. Well, obviously I do, because I've made it listed as my number 4 of the year, which means it's very unlikely to get knocked out by any other games that might come along. This game is all about players working on developing their own subdivision. It's actually kind of building a subdivision of Suburbia, which is, this is basically the sequel to Suburbia. I'm just kind of scatterbraining all over the place today. But okay, long story short, in this game, players are building a subdivision using tiles, using a collection of tiles, trying to put them in certain spots and get combos because when you put a certain tile next to another tile, you have the potential to activate that other tile. So when you put tiles down, you don't get any immediate benefit other than potentially scoring some points. But if you're smart about how you lay out your subdivision, your subdivision as you're developing it, you can create these wonderful combo chains where, hey, I'll activate this and this because I put these next to each other, knowing that later on I'd place this new one here and fire both of them off and score, or complete one of several different objectives, because the game is always throwing short-term and long-term objectives at you that if you can score, you can make more points. The thing that really elevates this, though, that makes that core function of what you're trying to do, build a subdivision, so challenging is every round you roll a special die that has a whole bunch of symbols on it, and that die is basically the planning permission die that tells you where you're allowed to build. So if you roll it and it comes up with the octagon, that means you can only build on octagon spaces. And while you may have set up the perfect combo of putting all these things over there, you don't get to build there because, oh, well, crap, this month planning permission says we got to build on these types of spaces. And so it becomes a very, very interesting puzzle. This game is a very elaborate spatial puzzle as you try to set up for these great combo chains, but then you have to pay the price if you don't pull off these combo chains. So that's actually very, very cool. And the other thing that I really enjoy about it too is the tiles you have in your hand. When you actually roll the die and it says, hey, you got to build in orange octagons, the tile you're going to build there, you choose from several in your hand. And after you've chosen that, the other tiles you didn't build, they go clockwise around the table and go to your opponent, and you end up getting tiles from your opponent. So this game also has a very, very strong, what's it called? Tile drafting element, which just adds to the complexity because, okay, I desperately want to build this tile because it'll get me the objective I'm trying to do. But I've got this other tile in my hand. If I end up handing this other tile to Jen, I know I can see that she'll be able to build her level 3 school and score that at the end of this first. Basically, there's 3 scoring rounds that happen over the course of the game, and I don't want to give her that school because I think this is the last school or the last residence tile in the game. So I can prevent her from doing that. But I don't need to build this myself. So do I give that to her, or do I build what I need to build? And that always creates a lot of very tense decisions to make. In addition to the fact that you've got all these really, really tough decisions that are driven by what the die did. But the thing is, it's not like you can get screwed by the die because everybody has to use the same die. So what you ultimately do with that die roll is a reflection of how well you planned for it ahead of time. It's a brilliant game, a wonderful puzzle. And then the other thing that's also awesome about it is the game comes with, I forget, about a half a dozen different variants that give you different starting scenarios that radically change the feel of the game. So the game has huge legs. Even after you're done with just the core puzzle, you have all these kind of specialized scenarios that gives it that much more staying power. It's a lovely game. It's absolutely brilliant. Love it a lot. Subdivision, number 4. Now, moving on to number 3. Now, I did the run-through for this a while ago. I proclaimed it at the time the best heavy Euro of 2014, and at this point, I'm going to have to stick by it because I don't think anybody can argue that Kanban is a heavy Euro. This thing is crazy heavy. There were a lot of big heavy Euros that came out this year. I've already mentioned a couple of them: Alchemists, Aquasphere, which also made my top 10 list. But there are other ones like a Zhangguo and what was the other one I'm thinking of? Panamax. So there were a lot of big, heavy Euros, but none of them are as much fun as Kanban, which is a very, very cool, very thematic Euro, all about trying to be the best assistant manager at a car manufacturing plant. Everybody in this game is running all over the car manufacturing. And if you just take a look at this board, it is so complex. There is so much going on. It is, it does its best to very accurately, or spiritually, I say, because of course it's not really 100% accurate. I mean, there's obviously a lot of abstractions, but this does a really great job of capturing the feel of basically participating in a Kanban style production methodology where there's a million things going on and you are running around like chicken with your head cut off, trying to make sure that all the pieces fall into place so that those cars continue to come off the assembly line. And while you're doing that, while you're trying to make sure the entire operation is running smoothly, you're also trying to innovate, trying to take the designs of the cars that your company manufactures and improve them. And why are you doing that? Because over the course of the game, there will be several meetings that are held where you get the opportunity to stand up and say, this is what I have accomplished this financial quarter. This is how I have improved the bottom line for our company. And if you can prove that you've done it in more ways than your opponents, you're going to be the person who gets the promotion at the end of the game. It's an incredibly heavy, incredibly intricate piece of machinery, this game, with a million moving parts. Although at its core, it's a very, very simple worker placement game because you have just one worker, you. And every round, you're trying to figure out, what department am I going to work? Am I going to work in design? Am I going to work in logistics? Am I going to, work in, testing? And while you're moving your workers around and your opponents are moving their workers around, there's one other worker that's under control of the game. That's Sandra, who is your manager. And so while you're always trying to pay attention to where your opponents are going to go so you can get there first, you also have to pay attention to where your boss is going. Because if Sandra shows up in the design department and you haven't done your fair share of improving the designs of the cars for your company, she is not going to be happy. So you constantly having to keep track of what she's doing. Long story short, it's an incredibly rich game with a lot of synchronicity between all these different arms you're trying to focus on, and that's what makes it my number 3 best game of the year and the best heavy Euro of the year. Kanban. Okay, now on to number 2. Although actually there's another number 2 which I'll talk about shortly after this. But this is the official number 2. I have no idea how to pronounce this. I believe the J is silent. Granja, I think, or Granja or something like that. But it's easy just to call it Granja, which is totally wrong. I've done a run through for this. This game is stellar. If I didn't know better, I would have assumed this was actually designed by Stefan Feld, which for me, that is high, high praise, because this game is a game all about trying to run a successful farming operation, in Renaissance era France or Spain, or I think it's actually Spain, although it's really kind of immaterial because the important thing is how well do you run your farm. And really, the crux of this game is you get a handful of cards. You know what? I shouldn't do it. I should be moving on. I shouldn't spend too much time. There's a video for this, but I'm going to pull the cards out anyway because they are the central conceit of this game. This might be one of the cards you get, and it's an oil miller. So this card has 4 different potential uses. You could play it as the oil miller, and basically it represents a hire, a specialty worker who comes to work your farm who gives you a rule-breaking ability that nobody else in the game has. You could play the card that way. Or you could play the card for what's on the right side of it, which in this case is you could add another wheat field to your farm so you're generating more wheat, which you can use to sell in the town square and score points. Or you could use this card for the left side, which means you've actually added you've upgraded your farm operation overall. In this case, you're generating more income out of your farm, and you have more pens so that you can breed and grow more livestock, and your hand size increases. Or you can play this for the top of the card, in which case this becomes an order you can fulfill. And if you fulfill that order, in this case, by generating wheat and ham, you can open up a stall in the central town market and start scoring huge amounts of points for the remainder of the game as long as that stall remains in operation. So the tricky thing about this game is you have a handful of cards. I forget how many. Is it like 6 cards, I think? Or maybe 5? Maybe it's 4, although your hand size increases over the course of the game. But really, if you're looking at 4 cards, you're really looking at 16 because every one of those cards has 4 radically different functions. And every round, deciding which cards to play and how best to play them to score victory points in a million different ways. You can score points by opening up your own stalls in the market. You can score points by in building up and making a better homestead for yourself so you have a nicer place to live. There's just so many different things you can pursue, but at the core of it is this hand of cards that gives you so many options. It is so cool and so satisfying, so silky smooth too. I mean, this game just plays like a dream. We absolutely love it. The second best game of the year, Granja. I really should have looked this up before I did the run through. But anyway, great game. Can't recommend it highly enough. It had a very limited print run in 2014, very hard to get. But in 2015, Stronghold Games, I believe, has picked this up for wide distribution. Stronghold Games, the same publishers of great publishing house, and whenever they put out a game, you should pay attention because they've got good taste. And they definitely have good taste because they've decided to publish this so that in 2015, you'll be able to get your own copy. Wonderful game. Absolutely love it. Now, before I move on to number 1, I got to do another honorable mention because this really should be my number 2, strictly speaking, and Granja should be my number 3, and so on. And I guess Viceroy got knocked out, but I couldn't, in good conscience, list it as its own standalone. But still, I'm gonna do a shout out for it right now as an honorable number 2, Escape Zombie City. Now, this is a wonderful game. Actually, Jen and I just did a run-through for it just, I think, last week. So you can watch me and Jen desperately, frantically run and scream and shout as we try to escape Zombie City by rolling dice in a cooperative way as fast as humanly possible. The reason I'm not going to actually label this number 2 is because even though it's its own standalone game, I tend to think of this as more of an expansion of Escape Curse of the Temple, which is, I think, just outside of my top 10 games of all time. So while this is its own standalone game, I still tend to think of it as really an expansion of this because this is really just taking this game and throwing in zombies as a new function. Now, it adds a lot to the core game. It really makes the core game much better. But if you'd like to know how, you can watch the run-through for it that we did earlier. And I think both Jen and I end up talking about how we feel about it relative to its predecessor, Escape Curse of the Temple. But anyway, like I said, since I am officially considering an expansion and not a standalone game, it did not make number 2. But, if Escape Curse of the Temple had never existed, this would have been my number 2. But anyway, so now, you've been very patient. Thank you for waiting this long. Let's move on to number 1. And this, I think, is going to be, for a lot of people, a very contentious pick. A lot of people might be very surprised by it. I think it is an absolutely amazing deck builder. Really, and I had really big doubts going into myself whether Jen and I were going to love it. But we have come to love it a lot. Jen and I both have played this game more times than any other game this year, and I don't see us stopping. This is the game when we got an hour to kill, we bust this game out and just enjoy it every single time because it kicks our butt every single time, but we always keep coming back to Shadowrun Crossfire. This game is stellar. It is absolutely amazing. Again, I've done a run-through for it. I go on at great length about why we love it so much, but still, I think I do need to spend some time talking about it now because for a lot of people, this is the worst game of the year. And where to start? Okay, well, let's just actually talk about what the game is, first of all. This is set in the Shadowrun universe, which is a kind of future cyberpunk, Blade Runner, Neuromancer style, Johnny Mnemonic style world fused with high fantasy. Because in this future world of, corrupt corporations that run the galaxy and cyber terrorists and all that stuff, the world is populated by trolls and dwarves and elves and stuff like that. And so it's a popular setting. It's been around for RPGs and video games for a long time, and now this is basically taking that setting and turning it into a cooperative deck builder, because in this game, the players are all working together to complete jobs or runs, because we are Shadowrunners. Basically, we have been hired to break into some place and steal something, and that's really kind of immaterial, because what actually happens is the job always starts after everything went wrong. We were discovered and we're trying to escape with our lives. And what we have to do to win the game is we have to fend off 3 waves of increasingly challenging obstacles. Normally bad guys, security troops and evil hackers and stuff like that. And we're doing that every round through deck building mechanics. We have a very, very small deck of cards that at the beginning of the game just represents basic skills like being able to fire off quick shots and calling in favors from our contacts and casting very, very simple spells. But over the course of the game, every time we take out a bad guy, we end up looting them and getting credits, or nuyen, I think, or nuyen. Basically, we get money, which we can then use to buy more powerful abilities that we can add to our deck. And you need to buy those abilities fast because this game is harsh and unrelenting. It never lets up for a second. I mean, this feels like an action movie to me. It's so high-paced, you're constantly in peril, and you're constantly on the run. Always one step away from, being completely destroyed by the nigh unstoppable forces. And yet, if you play smart, you can still come out ahead and win against all odds. If you play really, really well and work well as a team. There's a lot of opportunities for cooperation because a lot of the cards you buy while you're playing this are what are called assist cards, where you can play them on your own turn to protect yourself and fight off the bad guys. But if you wait and hold them in your hand and play them on the turn of your teammates, they become much more powerful. So everybody is involved in everybody's turn, and every round of this game, because the odds are so far against you, requires a lot of very careful thought and planning. And a lot of challenge. This game, every time we play it, really, forces us to play our best, gives us a really, really tough puzzle to solve, and very little time to do it. And it's a really, really great example of escalation because the game always starts off very easy. The first couple of rounds, the first few bad guys, they're a piece of cake. Even if they're really tough bad guys, you can still mow through them very, very quickly, get very early some really great incentivizing because you get an influx of cash, you buy some really cool stuff, and then you're ready to say, right, we're ready, let's go on and take on. And then the game hits you back hard and just really beats you down. So it has a great escalation that we very much enjoy. Starts off slow and it goes to 11 very, very quickly. But what makes this game special to me more than anything else is, after you make it through your run, whether you win or lose, if you win, if you actually get away, if you defeat all the bad guys and make it away, everybody who was in that run scores 3 experience points. And they're called karma points. But that's hugely important because you continue to accrue these points over multiple sessions of this game. And it basically takes on an RPG-like element where you're leveling up, where every time you play this game, you're building bigger and better opportunities for future play. And that sense of persistence, that I am building a character over multiple games. I mean, I've got let's see, here's Jennifer's character. She's up to 18 experience points, 18 karma. Just if we can just get one more win, we'll cross 20, and Jen's going to be able to buy her second big level upgrade. She already has Shopping Agent, and when she buys her second one, there's a million different abilities you could get. The game comes with page after page of stickers, and you pick the sticker by paying your additional karma. Once Jen crosses level 20, she'll have enough to maybe be able to buy High Roller or Cigar Money or Just Tough or Got Your Back or Combat Foo or Minor Knack or In Training, and these give you all kinds of new special abilities that break the game. Now the interesting thing is they're small abilities. They don't sound like much. They're simple things like draw 1 extra card at the beginning of the game, get 1 extra hit point. But this game is so knife's edge tense. 1 extra card at the beginning of the game could be the difference between winning and losing because it is such an interesting, challenging puzzle to solve. But the reason Jen and I have played this game so many times, we've played it well over 30 times now, or at least I have. Jen hasn't. This is definitely my favorite solo game of all time now. If ever I'm going to play a solo game, it used to be, what was it? It used to be Space Hulk, Death Angel, or SOS Titanic. But now it's this, because if I'm going to play a solo game, I want to play a game where I continue to level Rahdo, the little dwarf here, up, because I want to get him closer and closer. Why would I ever play any other game that, takes place in about a half hour, 45 minutes, that doesn't let me level up, that doesn't let me build towards something long-term when we could play this. That sense of permanence and growth and getting attached with a character that we could play practically forever, because this game has a very long, open-ended leveling structure, where the more I level, the stronger I get, the stronger the obstacles I face get. Basically, the longer I go, the higher level I am, the more obstacles I have to throw into the challenges to continue to level up, to get even more and more power. It becomes like a self-fulfilling feedback loop. The snake eating its tail as you just keep on leveling and getting more and more cool abilities, but then fight tougher and tougher stuff. And the game is very smartly designed in a lot of cool ways to ensure that it never ends. I think more than anything else, I might liken this to a board game equivalent of playing a first-person shooter that has leveling mechanisms. Like, these days, all first-person shooters, if you play them online, you earn experience points to get better weapons, to get better skills and whatnot, and you just keep playing and playing and playing. You eventually, max out your character, and then they usually have a thing where, hey, we'll give you a lot of prestige if you wipe your character and start leveling again, like, the Call of Duty systems. This game has that feel. Every time you play, you're going to have the same basic situation you find yourself in. Just like if every time you play a team-based deathmatch shooter, you're going to have the same. You're in a location, you're using the same types of weapons, fighting the same types of enemies, and if you do well, you'll earn experience points that let you level up and become more powerful. And even though every time you're playing against the same types of enemies and the same types of locations, you do the same types of weapons, you get a radically different gameplay experience. And that is definitely true here. We have never played two games that work out the same way, because the game is constantly surprising us. And that's why it's the best game of the year. It's a game I can truly imagine Jen and I will be playing for years to come, because it's going to take years for us to get our characters up to where we could fight the big boss dragon, which you have to have 60 karma. And that's going to take a long time to do it. But this is just a great game that if Jen and I are just sitting around, hey, what do you want to play? Let's just play Shadowrun, because maybe we'll score a few more points and we can get that much closer. And it's so compulsive, so compelling, that we just enjoyed a lot. And even if it wasn't for the persistence, the game itself is a huge blast. Like I said, it is the fastest paced game I own. It feels like an action movie, or it feels like a high-paced, high-stakes, very lethal video game. And that's why I enjoyed it so much. That is why it's my #1 game of the year. And I mentioned up front, a lot of people would be shocked by this. A lot of people say it's one of the worst games of the year. I think almost every time somebody says that, I've actually talked to a lot of people. I've been involved with a lot of chats about Shadowrun Crossfire online. If you can go to Board Game Geek and see. I've spent hours and hours talking about just how cool and great this is and why. And it seems like the #1 reason people really have a hard time with it is because, I've heard people say that it feels very scripted, that it plays itself, that all the choices are always really, really obvious, and that it's also very harsh and unforgiving and you can almost never win. I think those two observations are very linked, because the tricky thing about this game is the choices are almost never obvious. To win, you usually have to fly in the face of what would be the most intuitive thing. Hey, I've got these cards in my hand. If I play these cards, I could actually hurt your guy and get him closer to beating him. I'll go ahead and do that. And that seems like the obvious choice. 9 times out of 10, the obvious choice is the wrong choice, because this game is very, very strategically and tactically deep. And often, even though you could go for some quick kills, you're better off waiting. Don't play those cards. Save up cards so you have a stronger hand next round. Don't use that card now. Save it so you can use it as an assist later, even if it means you can get a kill now. Because if you get the kill later, the way the money distribution between players will happen will be different, and that could be the difference between your teammate being able to buy this really awesome spell versus this kind of second run spell. There are so many things that go into every choice you have to make, and a lot of non-obvious elements that I think when players say, wow, yeah, the game plays itself, it's on rails, and I keep losing, well, those two things are kind of committed. That's why it's our #1 game. It's absolutely fantastic. Man, I cannot wait for expansions, new stuff to go into the box, new stuff to buy in the black market, new adventures to go on. But you know what? Even if this game never had any expansions, it would not change the way I feel. Maybe after we played this probably 80 times or so, and we've made it to level 60, and we've finally been able to face off against the big Uber Dragon and beat him. Maybe by that point, I'll be starting to think, hey, you know what, maybe I don't need to be playing this game so much anymore because I've actually achieved something. I've kind of won the game. But that's going to take a long time. We are going to so get our money's worth out of this game. It's just absolutely fantastic. And that's it, folks. Shadowrun Crossfire, #1 game of the year, according to Rahdo Run Through anyway. You might disagree. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, by all means, let me know. I always answer any questions anybody asks me. I hope you guys all had a wonderful year like Jen and I did. We've had a great time. I've been really enjoying making run-throughs for you. 2015 looks to be on track for more of the same. Watch this channel because on January 1st, I'm going to be doing another top 10, my top 10 most anticipated games as of now of 2015. So you'll be able to find out what's in the future, what am I most excited about. That'll be coming in just a few days. And I think that's it, folks. I've been talking now for 44 minutes. I had hoped I'd be getting through this quicker, but I ended up taking a long time anyway. I've taken you away from your friends and family long enough. Go have your Christmas turkey. Go have your mince pies, whatever. Go unwrap your presents. Hopefully you got one of these games. And I'm going to end it there with very happy holidays. Thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.